That would be fun. Well, thank you.
And if you ever push these buttons and it doesn't show green red on there, then you can use those buttons.
Are we just voting 1, 2, and 3?
Well, that's all I did. Were we supposed to do anything different?
Last year I didn't do that on it. How nice are you? No, I'm just thinking. Twice a day for the first 3 weeks, after that once a day. I'll keep you posted, but thanks for doing it, guys.
Glad it caught it.
Make me feel better. Lack energy.
Side effects.
Well, so she's
Is that in
I'll keep you posted.
water lines?
So you need to.
We went out last night.
I'll tell you what.
This is asbestos.
So we're in the bad part of the city.
All in that same area of town. Well, up that part, you supposed to get something. This is.
Any issues with Bruce construction? Sorry, guys, Cruz.
Right, yeah, so I got to get a price.
You're still. Well, the only piece we're looking to do is just that one front area. Yeah, the donor. Trying to do that one renovation. So I'm trying to hold. Yeah.
Alright.
What?
I'm suddenly sick.
My grandpa was a bona fide.
I think it'd be cool if Washington won because they're missing so many people.
If they get free fireworks.
No, the first two guys, the first two guys are all out.
So it's 7-up.
Okay, whoa, whoa.
7-7. This is.
No, I can tell you how it works. I'm serious. What do you think we just mean roster because of our ego? What's the deal? Okay, this is how it works. So you know.
Should have had a table of refreshments then.
I got kicked. On Jeopardy this whole time.
So we got everybody here out of here.
Never went back.
Glad to be.
So, I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that.
Brittany, do you need a fourth? The mayor said that some were doing 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do you need a fourth category, or are you okay with just 1, 2, and 3 on the lines?
I honestly have no idea.
Brian, howdy.
I just did the top 3.
Would you mind leading us today? Your last meeting, would you
Grand
lead us in a
finale.
pledge or in a moment of silence?
I voted on one that wasn't even on the list. We're driving down and I see this shiny house and I put that as number 2. And then I come back and it wasn't even on the list. I missed the turn. I was following the lights.
Yeah, Mayor, you were right. There are a lot of really nice ones that weren't on our list.
Did something
I
yesterday.
noticed that. And I think some people probably could have self-nominated, but I almost feel like I'd like to drive around and
186
just
miles on
write
it.
some
Dude
address and
was 44,
nominate some
died
other
from
some
COVID,
people.
been
So
in
many
hospital.
accidents.
Yes, there were. Well, thank you, Ann. This is exciting.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Is
Is this from you? Did you make it?
Nobody.
Yum. I love homemade. And thank you for the gift card, Brian. Yeah. And these are from
Glenda.
Glenda.
Hey, how do I go take a look at this?
I just,
Like, well, here's the business partnership. So I called the guy and we went over and looked at it. And I said, I'm not gonna lowball you, but I'm gonna give you an offer. And it's a fair offer. And, he first come back and said, no, we can't do that. She owes more than that on it. And I says, I get it, but I says, I can go down and buy a brand new one for a couple of $1,000s more. He's like, this brand new, it's got 180. Yeah, but it's 2021. He bought it a month after I bought mine. But he's already put a cage, wheels, tires,
Yes.
Thanks for advice.
yes.
light bar.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Have you got your recorder on there, Brittany? Perfect, thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody out to the Roy City Council meeting, December 21st, 2021. Time is 5:30. I'd like to recognize we have Councilmember Paul, Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Wilson, and Councilmember Saxton. And we're going to excuse Councilmember Burrell. I believe she is out of town. With that, we'd like to ask Councilmember Saxton if he would lead us in a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance.
If you would, please. Thanks. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, council, we have one consent item. The approval of the November 16th, 2001 Roy City Council meeting minutes. Any comments or questions on that?
I have a small change that I've sent to Brittany.
Okay, I think I remember reading something about that I think it should have been your name, and it was your name.
That's
that-
the,
oh, there it
that's
is.
the change I.
That's it. Yep. Okay, so perfect. Any other comments, questions, council? Okay, with that, do I have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Thank you, Diane.
I'll second that.
And God gave me a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, they are approved. Thank you. Public comment period. If you have anything you'd like to share with us in public comment, please step up to the mic, give us your name and address. Obviously, other people have some big things going on tonight. Okay. Hearing none and seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to the action items. First action item is Resolution 21-6, approval of the Roy City voter participation area. Andy, I believe you're talking this one.
I'll talk on this, Mayor.
Perfect.
What you have before you is Resolution 2126 that creates city voter participation areas. And this resolution has, like Ed McMahon used to say, it has everything you need to know about voter participation areas. So, but what happened back, I believe it was a year ago, we were required to set up voter participation areas, which we did, but that was based on the, I think it was the 2010 U.S. Census. So now that there's a new census out, we have to do it again. So that's what's happened. State law is requiring that we do it again in another year, and then we wait 10 years, do it again. Okay, so that's what we're gonna have to do. The county has prepared the map that you see that, and we're gonna go with that map. Technically, cities can change the map if they would like to, but I think the county's done a lot of work on it. It meets the requirements. These sections of the city need to be, they have to be contiguous, compact, and substantially equal in population. So they have to shift things around to make sure they get the right, amounts on the population. So this is required to be voted on by the council prior to January 1st of next year. The county just approved this on December 14th, I believe. So they had contacted everybody and said, hey, you're gonna have to find this time in between. And luckily we had a meeting in between. So that's there for your approval, and I'd ask that you approve it.
Perfect. Council, any questions or comments relative to this resolution?
Looks like they did a good job mapping it out pretty evenly, size-wise, area-wise.
Yeah, pretty close, isn't it? Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, with that, do I have a motion then to approve Resolution 21-26, approval of the Roy City voter participation areas?
So moved.
Joe, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Diane, thank you. We have a first and a second. This is a roll call vote. Brittany?
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton.
Aye.
Okay, resolution's approved. Thank you. We now have Resolution 21-27, approval of the 2021 waterline replacement projects. Ross?
Hey. Yep, I'm here, Mayor, Council, to have the resolution 2127 approved for our 2021 water line replacement. On November 23rd, we had a bid opening with 8 companies bidding it, with the low bid being Orman Construction at $1,346,833.91 being the low bid, with the high bid of $2.3 million basically. So we've done work with Orman before. I'm just here to see if you guys will approve that. If you have any questions or?
Maybe bring your mic closer to you.
Okay, sorry.
Any questions, council, on this resolution? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Ross. Do I have a motion then to approve Resolution 21-27, the approval of the 2021 waterline replacement projects?
So moved.
Ann, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, we have a first and a second. This is a roll call vote. Brittany?
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
and Councilmember Paul.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ross. It's approved. We do have one presentation tonight. It's the fiscal year 2021 audit report by Wiggins and Company. I believe, Scott, you're going to share your thoughts on this tonight.
Well, see if this is that close enough? Can you hear me okay? All right. Thank you for having us out to do the audit again. It was a, we just want to recognize the staff for their help and making it go as smoothly as possible. Audits there's a lot involved, of course, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So we appreciate all the effort that was put into helping us get our job done. You should have a financial report before you. It's the annual comprehensive financial report. It's for, of course, the June 30, 2021 year end. This is your financial. We assist the county, the different accountants in the city with putting this packet together. But this is your financial. We just want to reiterate that is your financial. It's just we put it into this packet. So. So included in this financial is a culmination of the year's efforts, all the numbers, all the checks, receipts, whatever, and all your procedures are all reflected in this as well for financial. So your financial procedures are reflected in there. So that being said, that's your responsibility to have strong procedures, strong controls that would provide a financial that is accurately stated in accordance with GAAP, so generally accepted accounting principles. So that's your job. Our job is to take your numbers and look at the supporting documentation, make sure that it's correct. And so that's our job. And as we have done, we've gone through the different procedures, the different controls, and our audit is a risk-based audit. So we look at your numbers and we say, okay, here's some things where they're higher risk. So, for example, this year you had federal money. You had a lot of federal money, so that's probably a higher risk this year. So we looked at that as a bigger risk. So we designed procedures to look at things that are your controls over those higher risk areas. And as part of the audit, we go through and we look at your procedures and then we provide an opinion on your financials. So if we go to page 13 of the big packet here, that is our report. Let's see. Okay, yeah, so page 13, and this is it's a 2-page report, but it goes over different responsibilities that we have, which I've kind of explained to you, responsibilities that you have as well. And then we provide an opinion, which is on page 13, bottom of the page. And our report is that the financials are fairly stated in all material respects, so that's what we call an unmodified opinion. So that means that we don't have any concerns with your financials. We feel that they're materially correctly stated. So that is our report on the financials. As I discussed, we do have, as we look at your procedures and your controls, as we're trying to figure out if your numbers are correct, we look at your controls. And if we find something that is of issue, we have to present that to you and tell you about the findings that we have. And if you go to page 130, let's see, page 130 of the packet, so going towards the back. This is it's basically a report on any findings or recommendations that we have. And there's different levels of findings that we are required to report on according to auditing standards. There's what's called a material weakness, which is a bigger issue. They're basically control weaknesses that could create a potential for a material misstatement. So, of course, material misstatements, we have a problem with giving you an unmodified opinion if there's a material misstatement. So those are larger issues, and then there's also significant deficiencies, which are also required to be reported to you, but they're not as big of a deal as a material weakness. So that being said, if you go to page 139 of the report, on page 139, we did have two findings that we have to report to you. One is what we call material weakness, which I just described, and the other is a significant deficiency. The first one is the property and equipment reconciliation. So, in a nutshell, you have purchases of capital assets, right? Cars, vehicles, buildings, other things, and GAAP requires you to capitalize those items if it qualifies. So you have a capitalization policy. If it hits that capitalization policy, you have to capitalize it, and you have to reconcile it, make sure that those things are happening and reflected in your financials. The procedures are happening. As the accounts payable is processed, the items are recognized, they're classified correctly, but then there's a procedure where you reconcile that and make sure that what's reported is accurately stated. And we just noticed that when we were doing your audit that there was the reconciliations of those capital assets need to be more timely and more just to have better documentation of that reconciliation process. And we're recommending as timely as possible. Monthly is great. Quarterly is great as well, but more timely than maybe just a year, because that creates issues. Recently, I think it was last year, you converted from another system to the Cassell system, which is your accounting system, and that process was I think there were some issues with getting the balances on correctly from prior systems, and so that created some issues with the whole system. So that's kind of what happened with that. So again, it's your procedures. We just recommend you do some looking at that reconciliation process. And then the last one is just bank reconciliation. So you reconcile your bank regularly. So that's not a concern of ours. We noticed that the documentation that showed when the reconciliations were done, it didn't document that it was done timely. So we saw that they were reconciled, but that the bank accounts were reconciled, but as far as documenting the timeliness of it, we couldn't see that it was documented timely. So we're just recommending that you just document that a little better on when those are done. So those are our findings. We had other management recommendations that are just verbal that we discussed with management throughout the audit, and we've discussed those, and we'll communicate those a little more as we go along. But these are the issues that we wanted to discuss with you guys and provide you. So, any questions with those findings? Did they make sense? I don't know if that made any sense, but okay, great. And then as far as the financials are concerned, we feel that your cash position, there's the cash with the city as of June 30 was $22.6 million. So we feel that there's a good, strong, you have good resources for a rainy day as well as ongoing operations. One thing we did think that would be helpful for you to know is as the general fund balance for 2021, the balance is at about 11.1 million, and of that, there's about $6 million unassigned. And we noticed, and there is a limit on how much you can have in your general fund. it's 35% of your general fund revenue. So you got to be careful as you're sneaking up on that, and you still have a good margin there. It's about $2.6 million, but to get there you had a pretty good fund balance in 2021 until you transferred the funds to the capital projects fund. So there was a $2.4 million transfer to the capital projects fund, and that kept you within limits, of course, and you probably would have been there without that transfer. But you're getting close to that limit if you didn't have that. So you got to be careful of that as you're looking at your fund balances. And as you transfer funds to the capital projects fund, you don't want to just have those funds build up and just accumulate. You got to have those earmarked for specific projects. Otherwise, the transfer is, the state could scrutinize that on, is that transfer really appropriate? So those are the biggest issues we wanted to bring to your attention, that something to be aware of as the council. So any questions, anything we can help with on that?
So the reconciliations were all done, but you would just like them done a little more promptly then?
And we understand that they were done timely. The procedures were there, but the documentation of when they were approved and signed off, it didn't show that that it was within the month or 15 days. It was later on when there was procedures there that document that. So we couldn't determine that they were timely based on the documentation. Does that make sense?
Yep, documentation.
Yeah.
It's not written, it's not
That's
done.
our job. Unfortunately, if it doesn't document it, we can't really give you an opinion on what we don't see. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay. Other questions, comments, council?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Brian.
just one. Page 15,
Okay.
financial highlights. First sentence. Underneath that, the city's net position increased by 5.9 million. Governmental activities incurred an increase of 5.7. And then there was something that you called, or we called, business type activities resulted in an increase of 181,000.
Mm-hmm.
Question is, what is business type activities?
That's a good question. So GASB, the guys that make these rules for reporting these financials, they had this great idea to take your financials that are governmental funds, which are accounted for in a different format than businesses, and they wanted those financials converted to a business presentation. And so they make us take those financials and convert them to what we call a government-wide basis of accounting, which is accrual basis. Receivables, payables, capitalized assets, what we talked about just a second ago. Right. When you have a building, you got to capitalize that. And so we take the city and we shop it into two parts. We have a governmental activities, which is your general fund, your capital projects fund, your smaller funds, and those are called governmental funds. Then we have business type activities, which is your utilities, so your enterprise funds. So those are what we call business type activities. And those had a net of 180,000. The rest had a net, if you took all those together, it was the $5.9 million, which is the governmental activities. And that's on the accrual basis. So we're taking they're kind of not what you're used to seeing, because you're used to seeing the accounts recorded in accordance with fund accounting, which is what we call it. So it's basically just taking those numbers and converting into accrual basis.
So based on these numbers, Roy would receive what you guys always call a clean audit.
Right, yes. And so our opinion that we, on page, what was that, page, right before that report, on page 13. So the clean audit opinion is on page 13 under the opinions, and that's what we call, we call it, the official is unmodified, but that's a clean opinion. So again, you do have a clean opinion, unmodified, so we feel your financials are fairly stated. And so,
Okay.
in all material respects, so. Does that make
Alright.
sense? So,
Hey, somebody's doing a good job here, Matt. Amber, as I say, hey, I'll tell it the way it is. Doing a good job.
yeah,
I think Roy City's in the black, significantly in the black, and that's always a good place to be.
yeah. Yeah, we feel fund balances are really strong, and like I said, cash position strong, so, and debt is, I mean, you don't have any general obligation debt, so that's great, so.
Yeah,
So, yeah, good stuff.
yeah. Indicators look good. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah. Anything else for Scott? Okay, I'd like to have a motion to approve this audit.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll
Joe?
second it.
Diane, second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We approve that audit.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks for your time.
Matt, Amber, thank you. Okay, your teams did well, very well. Perfect. We have one discussion item, a ramp grant discussion. And Travis, we're excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here, Mayor and members of council. As you recall, a couple weeks ago, we had conversations about ramp ideas, and we kind of came here with the notion and idea of pickleball courts. And we talked about various things from more pickleball courts at Emma Russell to pickleball courts at George Wallen Park. And one of the things I was tasked to do that evening was to try to get an average unit cost, you know, what each individual pickleball court would cost. And it's a little bit of a moving target, to be honest with you. You've got to deal with things like grading issues, and do we have to carry a bunch of cement to the actual courts themselves? Are we close to enough to power, and do we have enough power for lights? I mean, so it's a little bit of a moving target. And until you get into the weeds of it, I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly what ours would cost. But we did some research with Wasatch Civil on 6 different places, and the average, the high pickleball court cost, and this is a cost without lights, was $32,821.11 per unit. The low was $18,703.91 per unit, creating a median of about $26,652, you know, if you just kind of create the average. There are some other fees in there. You know, that does not include lights. Lights are about $3,000 to $5,000 per court. We would have to add, we typically, working with Wasatch Civil, like to add about a 25% contingency clause just in case for some of those type of things. The city manager told you last time we had about $150,000 from our end to play with, and I guess what I'm doing here tonight to say, where do we want to go? You know, do we want to do this?
Well, I'm wondering about, sometimes I think it's nicer to take care of what we have first. And I remember you talking about West Park needing a lot of help too. When we take care of that, that would come out of the 150,000, I guess. Can you get any ramp grant money for some of that help, or would it just come out? But I still think it's pretty important that we maybe instead extend ourselves, but that's one of my thoughts.
No, and I don't disagree with anything you're saying. We actually, and I think Matt addressed this a couple weeks ago, we actually put in for some money in our budget for a potential major project at West Park. Unfortunately, I believe I think we put in over $1 million. You know, that's the scope of doing that project correctly. I don't know what it is we could get for the 150. I would have to get back with you on what we would get for that. The challenge there is if we're going to do it right, we would still have $1 million-ish of projects still left to be done. When RAMP does grants, they don't do them on the assumption that I'm going to be able to get more and more annually. you know, so that would be my concern there, because I would hate to have kind of a 10% completed project, so to speak.
Yeah, let me let me weigh in just so I understand, council, the challenge we face, and so you understand the issue. The city went in a few years back and basically put a ramp request in to build an ice rink. We were allocated 150, 200,000, I'm not sure what the exact number was. When it finally got to the city council rejected it. And today we do not have an ice rink in the park just next door to the municipal building. And yet, the ramp grant request was approved to pay half of that. That's an embarrassing situation, okay, for the city, because we had to reject that ramp request that the county approved in behalf of Roy City. And the reason why that happened, in large part, is because the city took the initiative that simply says, there was talk about it, took the initiative that says, let's go out and let's basically apply for a ramp grant to put an ice rink in. But the council did not pre-approve that. And when it came back to the council basically rejected that.
I have a question on that, though. Didn't it happen in the bridge of two different councils? It started with one, and the new council was the one that rejected it?
It can. It can.
I think in that situation, that was the case. I'm not defending it, but you had different visions from different groups.
And different circumstances. But the time and effort that in this case Travis has to put in to put a ramp grant package together and then work that through the process to get it completed is coming up. And so the real challenge is going to be is this. If there's a proposal, you have a proposal, the city has a proposal that says, let's submit a ramp request, then let's say tentatively right now, go with it and give him a tentative approval to go ahead and submit for a ramp request on an idea. And then all we're going to ask sometime over the next few months, particularly when we get into the budget cycle, is we're going to ask you to come back and says, we got approval. Now, council, we need the money to basically complete our part of the deal. Roy City really cannot afford to submit a ramp request for a lot of money and then say we're not going to fulfill our requirement. And that's exactly what happened. And the county doesn't really care whether it's, as Joe suggested, one council or different council. The fact of the matter is we turned that thing down. Now, luckily, I suspect they probably redistributed that money and did something else with it. But the important thing is the law reads, the city council has to approve the funding. So I say, if we're going to send Travis out and we says, apply for grants, then give him a tentative green light that allows him to go ahead and apply for those grants, because those grants are not going to wait for our October meetings or our April meetings. He's got a deadline when those ramp grant packages have to be submitted. So I say, do you want pickleball courts? Then I say, if you do, and he believes that he can submit maybe half of the funding can come from a ramp request, then give him the green light to go up there and says, okay, go after it. And then we'll work the plan when it comes up to the budget cycle so he can fill in our half that we have to pay at the end.
What about indestructible bathrooms? Have you figured them out? Maybe we can apply for some of them.
Boy, I wish we could. You know, you're right.
Bathroom that senses destruction's going on and it closes its doors and locks them in.
I think they're right on the verge. We haven't quite got there yet, though.
But I think you've locked up a couple of bathrooms already, and you got cameras going up, right?
Yes, sir. We have cameras in the process. It completed at 6,000, near completed at Emma Russell, and near completed at West Park.
And I think they would have been completed had we got all the assets in and got everything done. But I'll tell you, we know we have to do that, because we've seen way too much damage in our public spaces as a result of not being able, and we can't determine, obviously, who's doing it, but we hope in the future we'll be able to solve that. And I like the idea that I think you said one time, Travis, this time of year we're locking everything down.
Yes, sir.
There's no reason for those bathrooms to be open, so if they're going to get access, they're going to bust some door downs to get access. Okay.
So I have a question. So on the Roy West part, because that is in dire need of lots of things done to it, are you talking about just over by the playground, the bathrooms,
Um,
that half of the park, but not?
That was the main area of this scope of the project that
And
we've
can you do
looked
it in
at.
pieces? Do you have to just tear the whole thing down? I mean, can you put a new playground in or just new?
I can submit a ramp for almost anything you want. I mean, some work better than others, to be honest with you. We talked a little bit about that last time. My concern with submitting for a playground is in the scope of how we're looking to potentially build that park or redo that project, we wouldn't put it in the same place.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
We would probably move it, I mean, and we're not for sure on this. We had worked on it for the budget, and then it's just kind of faded a little bit, to be honest with you, when we didn't get the funds. But we had talked about maybe moving it more to the center, think almost behind home run fences of the bigger field, so both parks could kind of have use of it. I would hate to be pigeonholed to that because that was the conversation then. But that's where we would move it.
So closer to the skate park? You mean,
I would
or-
tell you to
or-
think more east.
Oh, okay,
More east.
okay.
Okay, so I think we got two conversations here. One is that there's going to be things happening in West Park, and then the opening conversation was, were you looking at George Wallen Park to put a pickleball court? Or
I would leave that up to this group. Last time we talked about putting 4 more at Emma Russell, or there was also a conversation about putting as many as 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 at George Wallen Park. That's where I'd look for your guys' guidance and what it is you want us to put it in for.
So in
Yeah.
order to have like a pickleball tournament, where would be the best appropriate place to put it? Like down at Emma Russell, so they'd all be in the same
I don't know
area,
that
or-
location matters as much as number of courts. And what I mean by that is most organizations recommend having at least 8 courts for programming as well as tournament potential play.
So
you
would
know.
that take away from soccer fields if you put it down in Emma Russell, or?
We did some kind of cowboy engineering, and we think we could put them next to it. One on, if we were down at Emma Russell, one on each end. And think we could potentially do it there. Your cost might be a little bit higher on the north end because you might have to go into that hill a little bit. And if you go into the hill, you're talking retaining walls and different things like that. We're
Makes sense to put more in one location than diversify them, because then you do allow for not only tournaments but programs. If your group wants to put on, a rec program for it, or, put on a training program for it, isn't it easier to have them all at one place and running people from one end of the town?
I don't know that you could completely do it that way, the nature of how those kind of tournaments, you jump back and forth. I mean, I have a bunch of brilliant people that I work with, so yeah, it's entirely possible we could figure it out. But there's no doubt when you ask people to get in their car and change locations for any tournament, it makes it significantly harder.
And is there enough parking for if we put in more pickleball courts
Emma Russell,
for people to park at Emma Russell? Well,
Parking's one of them things where you always think you have enough until you realize you don't. Emma Russell clearly has quite a bit of parking. It's a rare that I've ever seen that park fill up, frankly speaking.
The reason we have the parking trouble that we hear about there is because everybody wants to park close to the field. that the
Correct.
kids playing on. So they park down around in people's
The
front
parking
yards.
issues we had a couple months ago where the people came in were all about road parking, not parking lot
Yeah, because you
parking.
walk out there and the parking lot in Emma Russell's half full, but yet they're up around the corner in front of everybody's house.
Yeah, and this wouldn't solve that problem, but
Yeah.
The tennis courts up at George Wallen, what's the utilization of them?
I probably 2 years ago I would have told you low. Something happened with COVID that, frankly speaking, tennis got a little bit more popular. I do see people play tennis there a lot
Wonder
more
about
often
converting them.
than we used to. There, frankly speaking, tennis is getting played quite a bit again.
do all the pickleball courts we have now, they have lights so people can play at night?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
they're playing it out dark 30 in the morning
It,
during the
it's,
summer.
you know, the truth is, I remember when we were pretty hot and heavy in COVID in about 2020. And I was actually worried we might start getting in trouble down at Emma Russell with pickleball because we had so many people playing and so many people wanting to
Waiting.
play.
Right.
And I was kind of worried that, hey, I don't want this to be a gathering spot, you know, that congregates lots of people. But
There's some diehard ones at Emma Russell that are down there at 6 o'clock in the morning playing.
Yeah.
People from my neighborhood.
No, it's very popular, and they'll be used. I think the question we have to ask would be is, do we feel that there should be, if we're going to agree that we need some more, which park should they be placed in? And if the intent of it is to use it for more tournament play, then I think what Travis is suggesting, co-locate them. But if you really want to get more utilization out of them, because the general public will use them wherever they are, then move them around to a couple different parks and allow the people to take a benefit of that. But if he's going to, if the council says that sounds like a good idea, let's move with it, and he wants to apply for ramp grant funds to be able to help pay for that, then you got to give him at least a green light that says, okay, let's move out. Even if the decision today is maybe we'll debate whether it goes to Emma Russell or we'll debate it goes up to George Wallen, he still can wait another month for that, but he needs to start putting a plan together to work on that.
ramp grants must be submitted on January 14th.
Oh, okay. Well, you have one meeting.
Do you have any other ideas then? So in your mind, are pickleball courts really the only thing that you see as
You
is
know,
the highest top of the priority? Is there something else that you see?
like I say, we have some smart people, and we've talked about different things. We've talked about potential, they call them pump tracks. And it's almost like learning how to mountain bike on these undulation area things. They're called pump tracks. Somebody had that idea. We've had the idea of pouring concrete cornhole boards throughout different parks. Lighting's always an issue. You know, we'll take more fields that are lit up. That's something that, you know, that we could do one for. As the mayor said, I think it's critical that you guys, you know, have a voice in this and feel comfortable saying, hey, Travis, you know, our constituents want A, B, or C, and we can go in that direction.
So can we we can do several grants?
You can do several grants, absolutely. Now, as we turn in grants, we must prioritize our grants. We have to say this is our first, second, and however many choices. There's different tiers of grants. There's major grants, that's anything over 200,000, minor grants, anything below. There's also, and we talked about this a little bit last time, for some art stuff, some easy grants that we'll be looking to put in for at the end of March. You know, for some different things and help with some funding for those. I could maybe do two, you know, I mean, in full disclosure, I could maybe get two prepared. I would be very concerned about doing a quality enough work if I extend it much beyond two. You're dealing with, you got to get bids and letters of support and different things, and I would be afraid that they might not be great if we started overextending ourselves a little bit there.
What are the odds of getting 2 grants? Because if we've got the same pot of money that we're having to take out of, I mean, is there a chance we'd get 2, or is there more likely we'd get 1, and so that one pot of 150 would go to whichever one we got? Type of
We've got multiple grants in the past. I don't want to tell you that we haven't. Each year's a little different, you know. I mean, the one thing we don't know, and they can't tell you, is what the requests are. You know, I mean, they have a set sum of money, and frankly speaking, they have it allocated X percentage toward major, X percentage toward minor, X percentage toward easy grants, different things like that. You never know what the requests are. I mean, it's possible you turn in 3 grants and you're the only one who turned them in, and you get all 3 of them at that point. And the alternative's possible too, where we've been fairly fortunate with grants, but we've had years we've submitted for grants and not gotten them.
And to that point, Council, WACOG sees those grants when they're approved. And interesting enough, Ogden City gets, in my opinion, the lion's share of those grants, and it'll be a lot more than 3. And so,
They
now, of course, they're
submit
bigger.
a lot more too.
And these probably submit a lot more.
They probably got a full-time grant writer.
They probably do. But to your point, we have seen multiples coming to Roy. And again, this is whether you like this comment or not, the fact is a fact. The county's collecting this money, and its purpose is to use it for these kind of recreational activities. And it is the community in Weber County community in a broad sector basically has an opportunity to, for a better word, bid on this money to help promote their recreational and entertainment programs. And so I guess the key would be is if we don't, somebody else will.
Hey, Travis, I have a question.
Yes,
Has
sir.
your group considered putting together a pickleball rec program? I mean, I've got to see, as much as I travel, pickleball seems like it's the fastest growing sport for all ages, young to old.
You know, we talked about it. You know, we've talked about, okay, how would we do it? When would we do it? I think initially we'd want to do more of an educational of how to play, and here's how you hold it, and here's how you keep score before we got into any sort
Sporting's
of
a little
tournaments and things like that. Because one of the challenges you also have, it's why you want to have it courts in, you know, lots of courts, is you also can't take up so much of the courts that the general public can't play. I mean, our programming can't be so invasive that, you know, the community just can't come and play with their friends or family. So, you know, that's why you're looking for more courts.
I was
So
over in Colorado, and you had to sign up online to get a court.
there are
Instead of people standing around waiting, you signed up for your time.
there are places that do it that way. We haven't had a big enough problem yet where we feel we need to. If we get to that point, obviously we'd have to look to potentially do that as well.
I mean, that would be my vote right now. I'm only one in the crowd, though.
I'm not.
Well,
Can
let
I
me-
get some clarity on your vote?
Putting them down at Emma Russell, so
Okay.
you're building the program in one location versus trying to diversify. I think in the future, maybe diversify, but if we're trying to get a program or attract more, I mean, that's a hot spot.
So my concern is kind of along with what the mayor was saying, that, I mean, certainly we want to do that, but now that's quite a ways away for people in the other part of Roy, and how much would we be losing if we put it at George Wallen in regards to the space that's used for other things to allow them to have something there? Because, you know, do we try to provide for these tournaments, or do we try to provide for daily use for the citizens? And with these bids, how many courts could we get if we use up all our 150? Is that what we're thinking? Use up 150, and so now we're
It depends
thinking-
on the direction you go. At 150, if we got an equal match of their 150, we're really, really close to getting 8 courts.
And so then you would do some at 2 locations possibly then? Or do you have to
What do you
put
need,
that as part of the bid?
four at Emma Russell?
So you're saying 4 at Emma Russell, 4 at, there is a little bit of a cost difference if we start shifting them around. You know, I mean, where a contractor's gonna potentially have to go to 2 different locations and things like that.
Well, we have 4 at Emma Russell already, right?
Yes, sir.
And so to do even a program play, you need 8. So we'd need to do 4 more there. But if we could do 8, we could do, yeah, you're a little bit different in pricing. I mean, I respect the fact of size, or not size, distance between, but we are only a city of 7.5 square miles. Driving from George Wallen to there, if people that live up there want to use them, I don't know.
I'm not sure. I would have to do my research on if that would be considered 1 grant or 2. I'm not sure about it. If you're talking about saying we're going to do a grant and we're going to split up where it's done, my knowledge tells me
More
that's
than-
probably going to end up being 2 grants. That's not going to end up being a 1 grant project.
Could you see doing more than 4 at Emma Russell?
4 additional more or
Yeah, 4 more additional courts. I don't know that you've got the space on that one.
you would, I mean, the one thing that we use our green space, there's not a lot of green space we don't use in this town, whether it be soccer, football, lacrosse, baseball, softball. We use the bulk of our green space. You know, where there's a will, there's a way. You would I don't see any way you could add more than 4 without taking away green space. And I'm not saying that's not an option. I mean,
I think
because
we
it
need
is.
at least 4
but-
down there. That's what I'm saying. I don't know that I'm advocating for more than 4. I'm advocating for 4. But you're saying we may be able to get the money for 8.
My concern, like I say, is if you split it up, I think they would view that as 2 separate ramp projects. I think they would view it as the Emma Russell project as well as the George Wallen project.
Time to write 2, write 2.
So
Well,
maybe
and-
do
and-
4
and-
this year and then put in for
In
next year
that
or so.
case, frankly speaking, it's almost the same grant. I mean, so you're right, I do, but I'd then turn it around and say, you're still going to have to make this decision. How do you prioritize them? You know, I mean, what's
Add
your
'em to
priority?
Add into
And-
what you have first priority, and then George Wallen's second priority.
And whatever it is you want, I'm willing to do. I just, therein lies the challenge a little bit.
Well, then, here's council, let me offer the suggestion. Are you supportive of the idea of at least pursuing a ramp grant to install some additional pickleball courts?
In the
Yes, I
city.
am.
You mean in
Okay.
the city?
Now, he's got to have a decision by the 14th of January. We'll have one city council meeting before that meeting. If we can just think about where that should take place, whether it be at George Wallen or whether it be at North or down to Emma Russell, then he can come and just make a pen and ink change to fine tune that before he has to have that submitted. But at least he can work up the package and have it ready to go. Are we okay with that? With the final determination coming on the 4th of January in that meeting? It'll be a quick decision.
Yeah, I have to drop dead no on the 4th or we're done.
Just for location. Everything else is green to go? You okay,
Keep it broad
council?
enough that you could do either or both.
Okay.
Can
Yeah.
can I have you draw the conclusion that there really is no benefit in doing a ramp grant for West Park?
I hate that question because I would love to do a ramp grant at
Then
West
do it.
Park.
Do too.
My challenge is and I can look at this a little bit. My challenge is going, what are we going to get for our portion? And even if we got a 50% match from them, what would that be? Because when
does
you do
it get us?
construction, yeah, exactly. What do we get out of that? When you do construction, sometimes step one is not exciting and it's not pretty. It's underground and it's utilities and you know it's those kind of things that you say we can't just jump to step 4 without taking care of step 1 first.
Yeah.
You know, and I just don't know if step 1 with the amount of money we're talking is going to be pretty enough when you're saying we're talking about sprinkling systems and electrical and different things in
Well,
that
if you
realm.
budgeted over $1 million for West Park and we have 150 set aside, you might get matching grants. That's 300. What are you going to get for 300,000? Not a lot.
I'm not completely sure, and I can look into that, Councilman Wilson. I really can, because I would love the idea of enhancements at West Park. I really would. I'm concerned that 2 things. One, as I mentioned earlier, I can't ever walk into a grant assuming I'm going to get another one next year. You know what I mean? And so then you go, okay, if we're not committed to doing this more long term,
Right.
you know, we might have an eyesore on our hands there for our 300,000.
Yeah.
And so that's a big concern of mine.
Is there anything you could do to it that would help with Roy Days?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, is it, it's basically you start the project, it's all or nothing.
I can get back to you on that on the 4th if you really want me to.
And do ramp
curious.
grants only look for the bling type of projects, or do they do infrastructure type of
I mean,
projects?
they'll help with it. I mean, there's no doubt they'll help with infrastructure and they'll do some things like that. But they want to put a sign up. I mean, frankly speaking, this is a tax that they're going to come back to you every 10 years and ask for your support and ask for your community support. So they like to show people this is the bang for your buck. You know,
There's a
just
big one right out here in Hope Center. You can see this
absolutely.
bigger in Dallas, says ramp grant funded, and they made a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, frankly speaking, that's a major project that we were fortunate to get. But yeah, I mean, I can look into some of them things.
Okay, here's what I think we got out of the council. Let's go ahead and proceed with pickleball courts. We'll work the final decision as part of an agenda item on the 4th of January city council meeting. But if you can go ahead and consider applying for that ramp grant, I think the council's supportive of it. We'll just finalize the decision in terms of whether it goes up on the north end or goes down to the west side. Is that okay, Travis?
Fair enough.
And the Diane's question then would be is take a look and see if there's a potential for ramp grant in the West Park.
Okay.
You got a vision, maybe that could be part of your vision of what you'd like to do with West Park, okay?
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
Good discussion. Thank you, council. Okay, city managers report. And
Mayor and council, I just have a couple of things for tonight. I think most of you have turned in the lighting decoration contest. If you have not, please get with Brittany by tomorrow with your list of winners. We will be doing a Facebook Live post with the mayor on Thursday at 9 o'clock, so please watch that. And then also, this last week, we had a pretty good storm with Public Works, as we've talked many times over again about employee turnover. Please be patient with us. Our streets department always does an excellent job, but we have a lot of new employees down there, and Ross is doing an excellent job in training those guys. It was one of their first times on the road in those snowplows this last time. So we're expecting to see some weather this week. As lovely as it is for snow to be on Christmas Day, it does make our streets
Put me in,
work,
coach.
so-
I got my CDL.
So just please be patient with them, so. But that's all I have.
perfect, thank you, Matt. Council, any questions,
I want
comments?
to piggyback that. There were some comments that come out that were maybe not so favorable, but if you look at it in a broad spectrum, there were a lot of favorable comments. I know our city employees bust their tails to get the roads and prioritize, and people need to realize that when they see plows driving down the road with the plows up, that maybe they're salting for prepping and things like that. So I just know that there were a lot more positive comments than there were negatives, and you know, if people have an issue, give us a call. We're reasonable.
Yeah.
Call Public Works, call Matt, call one of the council members. We'll figure out a resolution to help them within the means of the city. But definitely, we've got great employees that are out there working through these times, and I appreciate them.
Yeah, great comment. Council, other comments?
I just have a question, Ross, I've had two people, and another one asked me today about cul-de-sacs. So one said that you just spray something on them, but you don't plow them, or? Yeah,
Last.
yeah.
Tell 'em
yeah,
I
and
lived
that's
in
what I
one.
told
Not a
them,
high
that,
priority.
but you do. Okay, because I just had a couple of people ask me that were complaining. I said, call the Public Works. Well, why don't you just tell them? I said, I don't know exactly what they're doing. You need to call them and tell them. So I just thought I'd ask what you do. I know, because I'd asked Matt. He said they take care of the general roads first, and then the cul-de-sacs, or yeah. Yeah,
A lot of the time, they're on round 2 as well, so it takes
right.
full 12 hours, but then they're going back to the regular routes as well, trying to clear the main roads, so.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, that's another thing, you know, you always hear the see something, say something. If you know that you've got a neighbor that's more experienced in life, has disabilities, less active, help them out. If you can't help them out, let's get a list of people that can go help them out. You know, if there's people struggling, let's get a network of people together that's willing to go help them out and be good neighbors like we should be.
Yeah, those are great comments. But I will tell you, Ross, I also got comments. And the interesting thing about the comments I got came along somewhat this same line. They live in Roy, and when they drive in Roy, they feel comfortable, even early in the morning, that those roads are done, at least gone through them. What's interesting is they go into other cities, okay? as they move from our city, and it's not the same, not even close to the same. And so I'm telling you, I get a lot of great comments about your team and how they're out there getting things done, even in the worst of situations. And we've got some tough ones coming. Thursday, we start to get rain. Friday, we're going to get snow. That's Christmas Eve. We're going to have snow. Christmas Day, we're going to have snow. And it's going to come again Monday. Our team, I have all the faith in the world, even on Christmas Day, your team is going to be out there, and they should be home, but they have an obligation to the people like I've never seen before. And I'm confident your team's going to be out there, and they're going to simply says, I'll spend time with my family, but I'm going to make time for my people. And I couldn't be more appreciative of that. Your team does some great things. And I think every one of the council members hears the same story. We hear a complaint once or twice, but it doesn't come anywhere near the great service that you and your team do for this city. When it comes to snowplow, there's not one better. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
So are you issuing, I mean, I've seen cars that are sitting on the road and I can tell the snowplow's gone around them. Are they giving tickets to cars that are left on the road, or?
That's the guy.
Down on the far
Matt?
end.
He's tuned out.
Chief.
Are you
being
giving-
addressed.
Actually looking at the weather report for this week.
So are you issuing tickets to cars that are on the road?
So if our officers are out and they see cars parked on the side of the road and it's snowing or has snowed and the plow's haven't hit their road, our officers should be actively at least one, citing the vehicle or attempting to make contact with the vehicle in order to have the vehicle moved. Yeah. Yeah, it's a team effort, and we just got a bit. Diane, your Ann, I seen the same thing, Ann.
Right.
We see those, and it looks like some of them are there. I can only imagine if the police officer gets by there, they'll mark it. Okay, so. Hey, one last thing, if I don't mind. Brian, this is it. This is the last meeting, okay? Let me just make a comment, and council, you're surely welcome to weigh in if you'd like. I remember 4 years ago, like it was yesterday. Where did 4 years go in our life? But I remember 4 years ago when you stepped up, you were sworn in, and we started going down this road, okay? I could not be more pleased. We've had a few bumps in the road, but we got so much done, so much done. Roy City, and I'll make this clear to you, Brian, and I'd say the same thing to Jan if she was here, but she's basking in the sun, Hawaii. I will tell you, Roy City is a better place today because of you. And thank you for your service, okay? You did some great things for us. Please do not be a stranger, okay? Come to us often, speak at the mic, let your voice be heard, okay? Because I know it'll be heard. But let us know how you're feeling, okay? Let us know how things are going. You did some great things for Roy, and we do appreciate it. We do sincerely appreciate it. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Brian.
That's for sure. Thank you very much, Brian.
Well, that's hard to top. Like I've said before, just really, I'm just playing the hand that's been dealt, and I have so much appreciated the council members that I've worked with, the two city managers that I worked with, the police, fire, and even those people that said bad things about me on Facebook. But the bottom line has been, and I remember Joe Paul and I having a phone conversation early in the game, and he said to me something along the lines that, Brian, if you go that direction on this boat, you're not going to be very popular. and I'm just warning you. And I reminded Joe that I already had friends and that the public was counting on a varied voice to be up here among you folks. And so I'm grateful I was given the chance. It was just barely, but it's worked out. The people have been very supportive, and I hope when you guys see me, you'll not be ashamed to wave at what we've tried to do. But I'll never forget how giddy the mayor, and giddy is the word, the mayor was when he called me when the construction company first rolled in and started demolishing that old Jake's over the top to build that brand new Burger King up on Main. We were so excited that finally something was moving. And I don't know if you remember that.
I remember.
But anyway, you guys are great. You really are. The city is second to no one. And I hope you pretty much all get what you want for Christmas.
Well, thank you. Council, any comments before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
No, just thanks, Brian. I've learned a lot from you, and we're going to all miss you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ann.
Later on.
Thank you very much.
Okay, do I have a motion then to adjourn?
A
I
motion,
move-
we adjourn.
Diane, I heard a motion. Do I have a second,
I'll
Diane?
second it.
Okay, Brian? All in favor?
Bye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Have a great, wonderful holiday season.
Ross, I
Sorry
got to ask you a
for
question.
getting early. I really am.